31 Tragic and curious facts about King Solomon and his lost empire that archaeologists have found. And this was his death, known as the wise among the wise. King Solomon is one of the most prominent and remembered biblical figures. Solomon was the son and successor of King David, wealthy, powerful, but above all wise. Solomon is always presented as an intelligent, compassionate character with an analytical ability based on virtue. He is distinguished among the 48 Jewish prophets and is also considered a prophet in the Islamic world according to the Quran. In this video, we will tell you the story of Solomon, the king of wisdom, the last great monarch of Israel, his most curious and interesting facts, what has been discovered about his life and reign, and the consequences of his death. Before delving deep, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications to stay up to date with our updates. Number 1. The meanings of his name. The life of King Solomon is mainly told in 3 books of the Bible: the 2nd book of Samuel, the 1st book of Kings, and the 2nd book of Chronicles. His name means peaceful and friend of God, which accurately reflects the character of his reign. Number 2. He was the 2nd son of King David. Solomon was born in Jerusalem in 990 BC and was the 2nd son of King David and his wife Bathsheba. However, their firstborn, and technically the first son of the couple, died during childbirth. Solomon had 3 younger brothers, Shemaiah, Shobab, and Nathan, and also had 6 half-brothers from his father's other wives. Number 3. He was a peace offering to God. The scriptures suggest that the death of David and Bathsheba's first child was a punishment from God for their adulterous relationship, as Bathsheba was already married to Uriah the Hittite, a soldier in David's army. In an attempt to cover up their affair, David sent Uriah to battle and had him abandoned and killed by his fellow soldiers. God forgave David, and it is believed that Solomon was a divine peace offering as a result. Number 4. He was designated heir by the intervention of the prophet Nathan. According to some historians, Solomon was mainly raised and educated by the prophet Nathan since his father was always busy with the obligations of the kingdom. Thus, Nathan is credited with the choice of Solomon as David's heir. Although he was the first son of his marriage to Bathsheba, Solomon actually had several older brothers, but Nathan had a lot of influence over King David, in part because he knew the complete story about Bathsheba and the adultery. It is believed that he used this to his advantage to convince the monarch to leave the throne to Solomon. Number 5. His kingdom began with an extensive purge. Of course, David's decision did not sit well with everyone, especially Adonijah, the eldest of David's sons and the apparent successor when King David fell seriously ill. Adonijah proclaimed himself king, and the various factions of power in the court confronted each other. However, Nathan and Bathsheba convinced David to uphold his decision, and so it was by his father's order that Solomon began his reign with a great purge. This included Joab, his father's general-in-chief, who had supported Adonijah's claim to the throne. And of course, Adonijah himself was also a victim of the purge to prevent conspiracies against the new king. It is important to note that Solomon was not only one of the younger sons, but he himself was also young. He is said to have been only about 15 years old when he ascended the throne after his father. Number 6. He increased military strength. One of the main measures of Solomon's reign was to expand the kingdom's military force, especially the cavalry and chariots. He founded many new colonies that also served as military and trading posts. Number 7. He is considered the wealthiest of the Israeli kings. Although Solomon is highly remembered for his wisdom, what really marked his reign was the incredible prosperity and abundance that Jerusalem had. Solomon focused on the commercial exchange and improving the economy. He sent expeditions to faraway lands to import luxurious products such as gold, silver, sandalwood, pearls, ivory, apes, and peacocks, among other very expensive products for the time. King Solomon had great wealth and is considered the wealthiest and most prosperous of the 3 biblical kings of the ancient kingdom of Israel. Number 8. His wisdom was granted by God. The most outstanding characteristic of Solomon was his great wisdom. As it is told in the first book of Kings, Solomon made a sacrifice to God, and he appeared to him in a dream, asking what he wanted. Solomon asked for wisdom to govern better and guide his people. Pleased with his response, God personally answered the king's prayer and promised him great wisdom. Number 9. The great test of wisdom was the judgment of a child. One of the best-known anecdotes of this king and his wisdom is called the Judgment of Solomon. Two women came before the king, both claiming to be the mother of a small child at the center of the dispute. Neither gave in, and both wanted to take the child, refusing any other option. Faced with this scenario and the stubbornness of both parties, Solomon made a simple decision. Since both wanted the child, he ordered it to be cut in half, giving each woman one part. Upon hearing the monarch's ruling, one of the women began to cry and quickly withdrew her claim. Solomon then decided to give the child to that woman since her compassion showed that she was the true mother. Number 10. He is considered the author of several biblical books. Traditionally, Solomon is considered the writer of several works, including some apocryphal and several books of the Bible, mainly Proverbs and the Book of Ecclesiastes, which are considered wisdom books or books dedicated to wisdom. Number 11. The king who built the Temple of Jerusalem. Solomon is also known as the Builder King because, during his reign, numerous important buildings were erected thanks to the wealth and economic prosperity of the kingdom. Cities, palaces, temples, and other buildings were constructed, with the most important being the Temple of Jerusalem. The story goes that the king ordered the construction of the temple with the help of a contemporary architect named Hiram and materials brought from Tyre. The temple became the permanent resting place of Yahweh, the God of ancient Israel, and the Ark of the Covenant. Number 12. The throne of Solomon was one of the first mechanical devices among the prominent constructions of King Solomon. His own throne was not only opulent and decorated but also had moving parts and a sophisticated mechanical system for that time. Number 13. He had hundreds of wives and concubines. According to the Bible, Solomon had 700 wives and 300 concubines throughout his life. The wives were described as foreign princesses, one of whom was the daughter of an Egyptian pharaoh. This union is believed to have contributed to a political alliance with Egypt. The only wife of Solomon who is named in the biblical account was Naamah, from Ammon, which would currently be the territory where Jordan is located. Naamah is also the mother of Rehoboam, Solomon's successor. Number 14. His romance with the Queen of Sheba. Among the numerous love affairs that Solomon had, a possible affair with the Queen of Sheba always stands out. The Hebrew Bible mentions a very brief, shallow, and relatively enigmatic passage that tells how the Queen of Sheba visited the kingdom of Solomon with many gifts and offerings, including gold, spices, and precious stones. She left satisfied when Solomon gave her everything she desired, whatever she asked for. According to a 14th-century Ethiopian source, the Queen of Sheba had intimate relations with Solomon. In fact, Ethiopian tradition has detailed stories about the relationship. This encounter gave birth to Menelik I, the first king of Aksum and the first of the Solomonid dynasty of the Ethiopian Empire, which remained in power for almost 3,000 years until 1974. Number 15. He promoted the idolatry of other religions. Solomon allowed his numerous foreign wives and concubines to bring their gods and beliefs to the ancient kingdom of Israel, even allowing the construction of temples to Astarte, the Hellenic version of a Phoenician goddess, and also a temple to Molech, the national deity of the Ammonites. Idolatry was punished by God, and of course, other beliefs betrayed Jewish tradition. Number 16. He spoke and wrote in Proverbs. The writing of the biblical book of Proverbs is attributed to Solomon because the king spoke and wrote in these ideas. The first book of Kings affirms that Solomon said 3,000 proverbs, and other kingdoms and nations visited Israel to hear the king and learn from his wisdom. Many of the biblical proverbs focus on instructions for living, observations, and reflections, almost all oriented toward the importance of seeking wisdom and justice. Number 17. The Song of Solomon. Like his father Solomon, Solomon had an affinity for music and wrote many songs, perhaps more than his own father. In the first book of Kings, it is said that he wrote over 1,000 lyrics. One of these songs is known today as the Song of Songs or the Song of Solomon, which is actually a book of the Hebrew Bible of an intimate nature that focuses on the themes of marriage, sex, and love. Number 18. Trade was important in his era. Much of the prosperity of Solomon's reign was due to trade and exchange with other nations. His kingdom established a system of land and sea trade that used the army and navy to protect trade routes and goods purchased by the kingdom. The king made silver and gold as common in Jerusalem as stones and made cedar as abundant as sycamores that are in the lowlands. The second book of Chronicles recounts that among his famous alliances were Egypt, Tyre, Moab, and Arabia. Number 19. Hebrew scriptures attributed to him. Most of the texts that were later collected in the writings or Ketuvim, the third section of the Hebrew scriptures, were produced during Solomon's reign. Number 20. Solomon in non-traditional texts. In addition to the Hebrew religious scriptures and Christian tradition, there are other books attributed to King Solomon. For example, the Wisdom of Solomon is a deuterocanonical collection of the wise sayings of the king. Deuterocanonical means that it is considered religious canon by the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church, but it is not included in the Hebrew Bible. However, some historians consider this book to be more of a writing by Solomon's friends in his honor. Number 21. The death of the last king of Israel. Solomon died after a 40-year reign when he was around 60 years old. He died of natural causes, and his son Rehoboam was his official successor to the throne of Israel. Number 22. But the kingdom was divided. Despite the period of prosperity that lasted during the 4 decades of Solomon's reign, Israel was divided once the monarch died. Rehoboam ascended to the throne, but 10 of the tribes of Israel refused to recognize him as king. Thus, ancient Israel was divided into the Kingdom of Israel to the north, where Jeroboam, a descendant of Ephraim, led the revolt against Rehoboam. In the south of Israel, the Kingdom of Judah remained under Rehoboam's rule in a much smaller territory than his father had governed, even smaller than the northern Kingdom of Israel. The two kingdoms were never reunited. Number 23. The historical discussion of Solomon. As with many biblical characters, the existence of Solomon is widely debated in the historical world. Regardless of his existence, the current historical consensus leans towards the idea that the descriptions of the vast prosperity of his kingdom are actually anachronistic exaggerations of reality in ancient Israel. In general, the consensus is that he did exist, although it is really complex to construct or verify a proven account of his life. According to some archaeologists, Solomon may have only been the king of territory in Judah, as the development of the northern kingdom was separate. However, many scholars and archaeologists do not believe this to be true, as there is evidence of a unified kingdom in the 10th century BCE. It is believed that there are many exaggerations about the power of Solomon. Number 24. The Vision of Solomon in Islam. While Christianity and Judaism have relatively similar views on the history of Solomon, Islam, which is probably the great monotheistic religion with the most differences, also recognizes his existence. Islam considers him a prophet, and unlike other religions, does not consider his death to be sad. In Islam, the idea that Solomon opened his kingdom to the idolatry of other gods is also not accepted. The Islamic version says that King Solomon was replaced for a period by one of his slaves who ruled in his place. It was not Solomon but a demon who lost faith. Number 25. The mistake of Solomon. According to Hebrew history, Solomon angered God by opening up to other foreign religions. In the Book of Deuteronomy, It is said that a kingdom should not multiply horses, and wives, or accumulate gold and silver. Solomon sinned in these three areas, as in addition to his hundreds of wives, the king increased the cavalry of his army and collected large sums of gold as taxes from his kingdom. It is said that Solomon's sins were punished by God with the renunciation of a good part of the tribes of Israel to the power of his house. In other words, the revolt against Rehoboam as heir was a divine punishment. Number 26. The first modern archaeological discovery related to Solomon was made during the 19th century, and there were some related findings before that. However, in 1993, the first significant discovery of our time was found on a split rock stela in northern Israel. An inscription was found commemorating the victory of an Aramean king over his neighbors to the south. This stela specifically refers to the king of Israel and the house of David. This is probably the first direct historical evidence of the existence of the Davidic dynasty in Israel. Number 27. In 2010, a team of researchers discovered a wall in Jerusalem dating back to the 10th century BC between the Temple Mount and the neighborhood known as Silwan. This wall was part of a larger complex that had several buildings and a guard tower. Number 28. The objects in the complex revealed the Solomonic relationship. Based on the artifacts found among the remains of the Temple Mount complex and in nearby areas, they estimated that the wall found in Jerusalem was at least 3,000 years old, which would place its construction in the time of Solomon's reign. Number 29. The ancient column in the Holy City. In 2012, the same archaeological team found an ancient structure in the Ophel, a hill south of the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. Inside this structure, they found a container with the oldest alphabet letters ever found in Jerusalem. The column also dates back 3,000 years, although there is no direct reference to David or Solomon. However, it suggests that society was much more advanced than previously thought, indicating that there was an administration that collected taxes and had regulations and laws as believed of the Kingdom of Solomon. Number 30. More artifacts from the Kingdom of Solomon. 2 years later, in 2014, Israeli archaeologists found more ancient artifacts on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. They estimated that all of them belonged to the era of the first temple built by the orders of Solomon. Among other things, fragments of vessels and animal bones were found. All the objects found were dated as part of the same era, the Solomonic period. Number 31. The seals of David and Solomon in the Negev desert. North of Israel, a group of researchers found even more evidence related to the kings of Israel. A group of clay seals that were used to seal official correspondence, similar to how wax seals were used in the Middle Ages. The group of researchers from the American University Mississippi State explained that this finding shows a political and administrative development superior to what was expected for the era of the Davidic dynasty. The finding supports the historical accounts of the reigns of David and Solomon and the extent of their kingdom. The fact that these seals come from sealed written documents shows that this site located on the periphery of everything was integrated at a much higher level, declared Dr. James Harding, a member of the research team. The stories of the great wisdom of Solomon are a fundamental part of the identity of the West, of the visions of leaders and their virtues. Beyond religious tradition, his biblical proverbs, although having a religious connotation, are actually ideas and life advice for the secular population. Like his father David, the stories of Solomon and the ancient kingdom of Israel have survived through the millennia and remain relevant today. And it is because we still use his name as a frequent adjective. We say Solomonic to arguments or decisions that seek to satisfy everyone involved in a dispute. We hope this video has been useful to you. If you have anything to add, please share it with us in the comments section. Like this video and send the link to your family and best friends so they too can learn more about the curious and tragic life of King Solomon and his lost empire. If you are new to our channel, don't forget to subscribe. Also, follow us on all our social media channels which will be listed below in the description. Remember, People who do not know their history are doomed to repeat it. Repeat it. Repeat it.